Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to all our viewers all across the world. Welcome to the first session of the Entrepreneurial Talk Series organized by the Indian Institute of Management Kozhikode Executive Postgraduate Program, Kochi Alumni Association. First, a little bit about me. My name is Arjun Ravindran. I am from the EPGP02 batch of Kochi campus. I'm an entrepreneur and I've been so for about 13 years now. I run multiple consumer internet companies. One is called Astrovision, which is into the astrology space. And Astrovision has received funding recently from matrimony.com, a publicly listed firm. I'm also into the matrimony space with Malayogam and Bedwiser. I run a digital marketing firm called Grey Wolf, and I also have a marketing tech company. I've also had the honor of being invited as a judge for various startup funding competitions organized by the Kerala Startup Mission. I've also mentored a few companies there, and I've also invested in a few companies in my own small way through the IIMK Alumni Angel Fund. Now, let's talk about our guest for the day today. He has decimated the adage, Jack of all trades, master of none. He is a master of all trades. He has been there and done that. He is currently the CEO of Kerala Startup Mission, an apex body under the government of Kerala promoting startups in the ecosystem in Kerala. He has served for over 17 years in IIM Kozhikode as a professor and has held various important posts such as Dean Academic, Dean Development, just to name a few. He has consulted for various corporates, PSUs, and governments in various areas such as operational excellence and business strategy. He's also the co-founder of IIMK Live, an incubator for startups by IIM Kozhikode. He has also mentored innumerable companies over the years, and in his capacity as the CEO of Kerala Startup Mission, Kerala State has received the Top Performer State Award under the State Startup Ranking Framework. Under his leadership, Kerala Startup Mission has launched the Fund of Fund program for startups, and they have facilitated investments for over 50 startups in the ecosystem. Without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Professor Saji Gopinath to the session.
Thank you, Arjun, and good afternoon or good evening and good morning to all the participants attending from various places. It's a privilege to be the part of the inaugural session of the IIMK Kochi EPGB Alumni Entrepreneurship Division. Happily remembering the day when I started this campus at Kochi in 2013, and it's come a very, very long way. And congratulations to all of you being a part of that.
Thank you, sir. In fact, it's a great honor to have you in this particular session because in this session we are inaugurating two things. One is the Entrepreneurship Club of the IIMK EPGP Kochi campus, and the second is the inauguration of the Entrepreneurial Talk Series, which is what we are doing right now, again organized by the same group. So the Entrepreneurial Talk Series is essentially a series of talks by entrepreneurs and experts on topics which are relevant for entrepreneurs. And it's a great honor to have you here for this. Right?
Thank you.
This session is going to be a little bit different from the previous webinars in the sense that we're going to have discussions on different topics. And that means that you can have your opinion and I can also voice my opinions. I can ask a question. You can also ask a question. I hope that's fine with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the audience, the viewers can also ask their questions in the chat window, and we will take up those questions during the later part of the session. So let's start. So Professor, entrepreneurship, the basic building block of entrepreneurship is the entrepreneur himself. Now, what are the most important traits that an entrepreneur should have?
Yeah, I think there are two aspects I will say. One is what we generally speak in entrepreneurship theory. And then we also look at some of the and something which more in practice. So I think Arjun, you should be the right person to say that, right? Because you're an entrepreneur all through your life, and I mean, I forgot to congratulate you for getting one more round of investment for Astrovision. Congratulations for that.
Thank you, sir.
My belief is that the most important trait is that you should be very passionate. That's a fundamental thing. Like you wanted to do something different, and you should be very passionate about it. That's whether it is theory or practice. That is something which drives the successful entrepreneur. The other trait I think is also to look at focus on the details, because many times the entrepreneur works on areas where there is a lot of uncertainty, and this uncertainty can be managed only if you keep your radars pretty open, I mean, pretty sharp. And we have seen the successful entrepreneurs are the ones, we've seen problems are for everybody, but then somebody succeeds, somebody did not succeed, primarily because they read the situation very well. And that happens because of attention to the details per se. Now, people also used to speak about risk taking as a very important trait, but I have a slightly different call, because risk taking also depends upon how much skill you have. If you see a person driving a bike in a well, which is what we used to see in the school days, we find it is very risky. But you ask them, they find it very easy. Or no, so if you have a right skills, then the risk taking is actually a part of it. So the skill becomes the skills means not necessarily technical skills alone. It could be at least one of the skills of the business, whether it is technical skill or marketing skill is also a very important aspect. But today's world, it's also equally important to see that there should be good networking abilities, because the world has changed substantially, and today we don't speak too much of entrepreneurship, which are factor oriented, where land, labor becomes a key thing. You basically speak more about things where the knowledge or the innovation becomes a key element as such. In such cases, the networking becomes an important thing. And I think this Alumni Association doing an ED club is a great example of that. This is basically a place where I believe that people can network, learn from each other, and then take it to the next level. So these are some of the basic elements which is required. Of course, you need to have ability to manage your resources well, but those things can actually be acquired. But passion, the sense of purpose, these two things are, I think, cannot be compromised. And for a success, you should also look at the ability to look at details and work on that. This is what my take.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, the ability to take risks is a very important trait that an entrepreneur should have. Now, I think entrepreneurs by nature are risk takers. They are risk takers both in in their in their careers as well as in their personal lives. But I feel successful entrepreneurs are able to take calculated risks.
Correct.
That is, they're able to measure. They use data to measure and then figure out what is the right way to go forward for a given amount of risk. So the ability to take calculated risks, I feel, is an important factor for the success of an entrepreneur. In my own experience, what I've felt is the ability to focus on things. As an entrepreneur, you'll have many ideas. You'll have so many ideas in your mind, but you have to figure out which ones you should focus on.
Correct.
Otherwise, you'll end up going all over the place.
Absolutely.
The same thing applies for patience. There are some characteristics where the entrepreneur should embrace extremes. The entrepreneur should be patient, but he should also be impatient. He should figure out when to be patient, when to be impatient. Just to give an example, it took me 4 years to get funding. Now that takes patience. I could have given up at any point in time, but I was patient there. But at the same time, when it comes to some other area, like for example, digital marketing, I have to be impatient. I cannot wait 4 years, to figure out whether one particular digital marketing campaign makes sense or not. So depending upon the context, I feel we, as entrepreneurs, we should be patient and we should be impatient. We should also have the perseverance, the ability to, keep going at it. There will be so many distractions, so many disappointments on the way, but you still should have the perseverance to push through when it matters. Uh, Similarly, in the case of the funding, right? I faced rejection 33 times. So 33 times investors said no. Uh, Now, I could have just given up at any point in time, but it requires a little bit of perseverance to push through. But at the same time, it's like Albert Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. So it's good to push through. It's good to try again, but you should try something different. Uh,
Correct.
Doing the same thing and then expecting different results, it may not exactly give you the kind of results that you want, right? So these are some of the things that I felt. And, as entrepreneurs, we should have the ability to take decisions. That decision might be right or wrong, but we should have the ability to take decisions. We shouldn't be paralyzed by fear, paralyzed by the thought that, okay, is this the right decision? Am I taking the right decision or not? We just have to take decisions and live with it. Uh, so these are some of the important traits that I personally felt, an entrepreneur should have. And there's one thing which is on the personal front. Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, right? There's going to be highs and there's going to be lows. There's going to be emotional highs where you feel really energized by what's going on, and there's going to be those lows when you just wonder what you're doing. We must have that ability to ride the roller coaster, because for every low there is going to be a high later on. So we shouldn't you know let ourselves down, or let you feel disappointed when there's a low coming up. So I feel the ability to handle our emotions, our internal emotions, leave the customer aside, leave your staff aside, your own emotions, your ability to handle your own emotions, I think that's also very important for an entrepreneur. Now, coming to challenges, what are the biggest challenges you have seen entrepreneurs face?
Yeah, see, many of these traits which you said are also very. I mean, I think it's important for all to understand that any decision maker within an organization also faces some of these issues. And if you really wanted to be a good decision maker and a good leader, you need to be very clear about this. One difference is that when you are running your own organization, your both the excitement and the low, which you said, will be a little bit more harsh on you or positive on you. But when you're
True.
working in an organization also, and we also use the term entrepreneurship, right? Where and I believe that today's world is such that even if you become an organizational head and you're working in an organization, if you really wanted to take the organization ahead, you should have that entrepreneurial spirit. Otherwise, you cannot really make. So it's not necessarily that you should always start, but even if you are not starting, but you are within an organization, doing something different and with obviously with proper calculation is important thing as such. Now you spoke about these challenges. Now the challenges is something which we see at different stages of the entrepreneurship or different stages of starting your business. Like you rightly point out, people will have a lot of ideas, and more example you have, more experience you have, more ideas you get. But it is not the ideas which actually makes the winner. And how well you execute is actually going to be a important thing. No, because in my current position as CEO of Startup Mission, we get a lot of people coming with ideas, and then they say that, see, my idea is this, and somebody else has this idea, which one? Why mine is not doing? So that execution part is very, very important, and the calculated risk you spoke about, where you actually do a homework. You cannot do everything, but you can at least plan ahead of that. And there, more often than not, what we see is that people actually don't look at customers. Many people don't know who is your customer even. And that is a challenge. And it actually varies from place to place. So unless you have a product or a service where there is going to be somebody buy the product or buy the service, you cannot I mean, at the end, you are doing a for-profit venture, right? You're not doing a charity or you're not doing a social service. So it's
True.
very, very important that you need to have a customer buying for your product. And that is something which need to be looked at as.
Hmm.
The third thing, so obviously these two are more with an entrepreneur or entrepreneurish idea. The other thing is about your finances or your resources. Now, the resources is actually a challenge which we find. It is not always lack of resources. Sometimes it is a presence of wrong resources also. Especially in the startup world, this is a big challenge because you have taken a wrong decision on having an investor,
Yeah.
and you had it. I used to say that we have several examples in Kerala where we could have had unicorns, but for the investor, because the investor actually stopped the company to become a unicorn for whatever be the reasons. So that is an important thing. What type of resources to be taken, and every entrepreneur is always starving for resources, and many times you actually getting wrong resources per se. So this again is a challenge at various levels. Now there is the classical entrepreneurship speaks about the starting crisis, the crisis at the working capital crisis, the marketing crisis, and even prosperity crisis. This is also an interesting thing. No, like you and when we speak about entrepreneurship, we always think only about startups. But again, in Kerala context, if you look at, there are a lot of small and medium companies who are successful, very successful, but then they never expanded
Hmm.
because they don't know how to manage the prosperity. We could have many companies who would have been in 100 crore, 200 crore range, but they are still at 1 crore, 3 crore or 5 crore range because they don't know really how do I
Scale up.
delegate, how do I the scale up challenges are not an easy thing. No, it's equally challenging as a startup. Now, as a person who has multiple enterprises, I think you will be able to give a lot of insights on that. But that is again an important challenge which we find in the current entrepreneurship per se. And the last thing is that there is always a debate, especially the young new entrepreneurs, about this valuation versus profitability.
Hmm.
You have always a debate about whether you need to take a strategic investment or you are taking a VC investment.
Hmm.
Now these two looks at a very, very different things as such. So you may have a business model which is more profit oriented, and which may have a cash flow component which may be ideal for a strategic investment or a debt model, while you actually go and approach a VC, and
Hmm.
you see that the VC wants something very different, because VCs are basically there only to make returns, and they are actually taking a huge risk. So their business models are very different. So the business model vis-a-vis the investor mismatch is another issue which many times, and many of these have actually led to failures in many companies which we see around.
Hmm.
Even
Hmm.
small, big companies, we have seen this challenge.
True, true, true. In fact, when you were talking about investment, right? It is so true. You have to decide whom you want to bring on board. It's not just the money that matters. If you just look at it from a money perspective, you might be able to get you, let's say, somebody who has absolutely no idea about a business to invest in you, but
Yeah.
that can turn out to be a huge problem for you later on, because ultimately you are answerable to these investors. And if they don't understand how your business works, their expectations from your business will be very different from what is actually the reality in your business. So it's so true, right? And in terms of challenges, I mean, what you mentioned is absolutely true. Uh, Again, looking at the personal side of it, the human side of it, the challenges that I've seen in my own personal experience is the mental battle with myself, mental battle with family, and mental battle with society. During the initial stages of entrepreneurship, um, there's going to be a lot of mental battles with yourself. Uh, Imagine, you're quitting a job, your very comfortable job, your wife is settled, and everybody is just happy, and then you move into entrepreneurship. So the first few months is going to be very exciting, because it's your idea and you finally have the freedom to execute it the way you want, and it's your passion. and you can drive it whichever way you want. It's all hunky dory. Uh, but after a few months, when sometimes things don't always go the way you want it to go, and then you slowly start, questioning yourself. Did you make the right choices? Is entrepreneurship right for you? Did you just jump the gun and then get into something that you are not really up for? I mean, those are the kind of battles that you will face with yourself, and it's important to handle that. Important to address that. Now, depending upon your family situation, right, you might have battles with your family as well. Fortunately, in my case, my wife was extremely supportive. I mean, she comes from a background where most of the people in her family work in government organizations. So that's such an extreme compared to entrepreneurship. But she was really supportive during the early times. The third battle is with society, and especially during the early stages, what you'll find is, uh, you check Facebook, and you'll find this post from your friend who's having a vacation in some exotic place, and then you're sitting at 2 o'clock in the night looking at your mobile phone trying to figure out how you can pay salaries to your staff. So after some time, it gets to you, So during my early stages, what I did was I just completely blocked Facebook. I didn't check Facebook because you can't really tell your friends to enjoy, right? But what you can do is stop yourself from seeing that and getting into a different emotional trip. Uh, and when I was a judge for various hackathons and startup competitions, typically what I've seen is for companies which are in the idea stage, one major challenge is they don't define the problem exactly. So if I were to ask, what problem are you solving? Uh, Sometimes I see that they haven't defined the problem that they're solving well enough. So that I've seen typically as a problem in case of idea stage startups, where they have an idea and then they're trying to pitch that idea. I don't see that all that often in the case of companies which have at least some revenues or have moved further in that stage of entrepreneurship. But in the startup, the idea stage, sometimes I've seen that kind of a scenario, and I've seen that to a certain extent in student startups. I see that a little bit more often in student startups. Uh, then, like you rightly said, right, you need to validate with your customers. You need to have a product market fit. That's very important. Otherwise, you'll end up building a product, but you don't have a customer, or the market isn't big enough. That can also turn out to be a big problem. You might have a fantastic idea, fantastic product, but the market isn't big enough. So these are some of the problems that comes up during the early stages. Some of the challenges which comes up a little later is building the right team. No,
Yeah.
you cannot do everything. It is impossible for you to do everything. The sooner you realize that, the better it is for you. So, building the right team, building the right kind of co-founders, that's critical for success. It's silly to assume that you can do everything on your own. So these are some of the things that I have noticed. Uh, Now, moving from challenges, to mistakes. What do you think are the biggest mistakes? What have you seen, in terms of mistakes that entrepreneurs make in your experience?
Yeah, okay. I'll speak up. I just wanted to add to your first point, which is a very important
Yeah.
point, because when I took charge 3 years back as Startup Mission CEO, I was wondering why Kerala don't have so much of enterprises, right? If you look at especially the startup space, yeah. And one of the biggest challenges is exactly what you said. That there is a big issue about the family not supporting entrepreneurship is not necessarily something which you always like to get a stable job sort of a thing, which is always given a priority. But having said that, if you look at it is not true that Kerala is not, or Keralites are not entrepreneurial. Uh, before if you before this new gen banks, we have almost, if you take top 10 private banks, 8 were from Kerala. Today, if you take the top 5 NBFCs, maybe 4 from Kerala. If you take some large format retail stores, many of them are actually by Kerala entrepreneurs. And you have, so you just, it's not true that the Kerala per se is not entrepreneurial. It's So one thing which we found is that unless we break that, that mental barrier, which is a very, very important thing, we will not be able to really go on the next step. So as an ecosystem, what we were trying to do is we were trying to glamorize entrepreneurship a lot. We'll go and say that you should be an entrepreneur, but we glamorize successes. The stories have been actually being, every story we actually try to publicize. So when somebody comes and says that, shall I get a job and shall I go to take an entrepreneurship? I'll say that, see, you just Google Arjun Ravindran and you Google your name. You may be working in a MNC, but nobody knows you. But if you look at Arjun Ravindran, you see that you get a lot of report about what Astrovision is doing, what Malayogam is doing. So you are basically getting a very different level of the social acceptance. And that's the only way we can actually make a change. And I think that's one very key element which Startup Mission is trying to do. Because this is an ecosystem role. The ecosystem is the one which can actually prompt people. See, for example, some part of India, the entrepreneurship is the one which actually celebrated. We don't do that. So the celebration of entrepreneurship is an important thing, and that actually will give a support to the people who are taking the risk. Now, coming back to the mistakes, which is just basically what you asked, and I think you already told the first mistake that people generally get an idea, and how do they get the idea? Generally, they look at the idea from what they are finding it around them. I go to a hospital, I saw a long queue, so immediately I decide that okay, the best solution for this is have an online OP registration. Now this and then very few people actually start looking at whether this is whether somebody else has done it. What was the failure for that? Do we have a different method? No. I found a problem, I have a solution, and then I start immediately working on it. So we generally say that there are three key elements which if you don't have, you are bound for a failure. I'm not saying that you will succeed if you have, but that because there's a lot of other things. But if you don't have these three things, you will have a failure for sure. The first is there should be a key value proposition. And that value proposition is basically where the customer become an important thing. Now, when we speak to people, they say that, see, Bill Gates started Microsoft without looking at the customer, or Steve Jobs' iPad or iPhone was not looking at the customer and he created the customer. But I think we are not speaking about, you don't have too many Bill Gates and too many Steve Jobs, right? We are basically looking at a specific customer need. Am I giving a value to them? Am I solving a large enough problem? That's important. It's a problem where 100 people, 1,000 people, or 10,000 people are only going to be your customers. You cannot really sustain an organization with that. So that is a very big mistake which you do. Now the second thing, which is again this startup issue, is that you have a value proposition, but you don't have a profit proposition. You actually burn your cash continuously. And this is again partly because of the VC influence. You can say you always keep on increasing your top line, but your bottom line will never become positive. And a large number of companies in the startup world, in Valley, and Valley is now moved a bit, but in India still doing that. So, but at least in a long run, it's not that you should be profitable in 1 year or 2 year or 5 year, but you should have a profit proposition. Otherwise, you are only burning cash, and after some time, it is not sustainable. That's basic finance. And third thing, which also you spoke about, is a people proposition. You should have a right skill team. If you are a good marketing person, you should have a good tech guy with you, or you should have a good finance person with you. So if you don't have these three, then you are actually going into a failure mode as such. And many times people used to say that, if I had some more money, I should have become successful. I'm sure you must have also said that. If I had got one more funding, I could have got successful. That actually shows that they have not planned. It's not that every plan will become right, but at least in the plan, you find reasonably number of blind spots. And then you are not working with very static individuals. You are working with adaptive people, right? So when something goes wrong, and you basically immediately able to change. People used to say that in a war, getting defeated is okay. because
Mm.
you start something, and let's say somebody like Reliance starts similar thing, and it's with a huge uh, business muscle. You may defeat. That's fine. But taken by surprise is something which is not acceptable in business. And
Mm.
if you see, most of the failures are often taken by surprise, because they have, once that comes, that is the time only they find, oh, this is something which I have not thought through. So that is basically where we speak about business models and things like that. No, we know that at the end you need to do something in field, but why are we doing all these business models, etc.? Is only to create that blueprint. So it gives you an idea about, okay, this could be a problem, and do I have a plan in case if this happens like that? No, if I plan that I'm going to get a funding in sixth month. If it doesn't come in sixth month, what is my way out? Do you have a contingency plan? That sort of a thinking is not really happening. So to put in the thing, many times the ideas are good, but the implementation becomes a challenge. And in the implementation side, you see this value proposition or a profit proposition is not there, and people many times build something and then they started looking at who will buy it. It is not really something which addresses the need. And I will also, it's slightly a different observation. I always also feel that if you make some must to have products rather than good to have products, your market is actually easy to capture, because in a must to have product, you are basically attacking the bottom line of your customer. So the customer immediately see the reflection on his bottom line. No, I'm getting this benefit. Then he will or she will buy it. But if you are good to have another nice product sort of a thing, in a good time it will work. But in a challenge time, those are the things which become a part of a discretionary spend. So you will have a challenge as such. Of course, the other elements like having a proper product and proper team and those things goes without saying, which I believe that people will have. But these are the common mistakes which we find at every stage of the entrepreneurship journey.
So true. I mean, I especially agree, I mean, completely with the fact of execution versus idea, right? It's so true. I mean, execution is absolutely what determines success. An
Correct.
idea alone is a dime a dozen. I mean, we see so many ideas. Now, in my perspective, what I have seen in terms of mistakes, is sometimes we, as entrepreneurs, when things don't go in the right direction, we don't take tough decisions soon enough. We keep dragging on. We feel, maybe next month things will turn around, or let's wait for some more time. You know, uh, I feel as entrepreneurs, we just need to think about what is the biggest challenge that we are avoiding. What is the biggest decision that we are avoiding to take? If you think about that and then take a decision on that, uh, invariably that will make a lot of difference in the life of that entrepreneur as well as the company. So essentially, like you said, right, being taken by surprise. So true. I mean, sometimes we don't change our strategies soon enough. We drag along. So that also tends to be a problem.
Correct.
Uh,
That's
one
where I think mentorship makes a
exactly,
big difference. You
exactly.
need a
So
sounding board many times.
true, so true. And so on one side you have mentorship and coaching, but on the other side, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink water.
Yeah.
The entrepreneur should be open to feedback, should be able to
Yes.
listen
Yes. Yes.
and take feedback in the right manner, evaluate what suggestions are being given from an analytical perspective, rather than attaching ego to that particular feedback. Sometimes I've seen that happen. No, this is my baby, this is my idea. uh, I don't want somebody else telling me that this is impossible. I mean, Steve Jobs, so many people have said this is impossible to Steve Jobs. He has made it work. This is my idea. Many people are telling it's impossible. How can that happen? I'll make it work. But sometimes it's good to be open to feedback. You don't have to accept everything, but you should be open to feedback. Because if you are open to feedback, then coaching and mentorship works wonders. So it's so true, right? I mean, being open to feedback is one element. The other side is having coaches and mentors to guide you. I think that's very, very important. Um, you know, When it comes to the better part, what are the best decisions you have seen an entrepreneur take?
Yeah, okay. I think one thing which we have seen is that there are people who have decided on pivoting their product at the right period when things are not going well, and they have become flexible. I think one of the traits which I also believe is that, and I think that also you spoke about taking tough decisions, which also depends upon if things are going in a wrong way, I may have to actually change my course, and many times you don't do that. Now we have cases where people have come out with fantastic products, but somehow market is not ready for them, and then they keep on harping. Now this product have to sell, and did not succeed. But there are people who have come out with products, and then when they found that there is a challenge, they actually pivoted the market, uh, or change the product in such a manner that even pivoted the market. So in fact, they started addressing the different market with the same product.
Okay.
So and I think almost every successful entrepreneur will have. I'm sure you will also have a very interesting story to tell on that context, right? Where you are some of the things which you originally planned, when you may have to make change and address, and sometimes you suddenly find there is a large market available with that. Now, this is true in several cases, right? In even large companies like DuPont is a classic example, which you used to say that when nylon was made, it was supposed to be a cloth fabric. But then very soon they found that that is not where the success is going to be. It can actually be, it can actually supplement steel, and then that's basically where nylon ropes and nylon reinforced products, etc., came, and that's a big market. So that ability to pivot is actually the one thing which people have to look at, because it's a dynamic world. It's not the very static world, and there is a lot of changes happening around us. Moving ahead is the other thing. The other thing which I found, and this is very interesting, is that some people actually able to find some very interesting opportunities, and that is basically where the experience many times comes. Now, if I'm an expert in fin sector, I have a lot of experience in the fin sector. I may be able to, if I'm a key observer, I may be able to find some areas which is not been addressed by anybody. And when you see that this is something which is not addressed by anybody, and you suddenly will see that this can actually open up a huge market for you. Such success stories we have seen. We have seen many times, and then I'm a big fan of blue ocean strategy, so I believe that many times you will be able to find out even large blue oceans with that. And the third thing which you find is that these other successes which you have seen is that people also started looking at good applications, which we say wow solutions. No, till that point of time, you thought that nobody thought about it, but when it suddenly came, you find that it was such a simple solution, but I could have thought about it. And we have seen several such things, and which actually grow very fast manner as it. So such solutions also are the which we have seen as a success. Then obviously people who keep their organization, and sometimes you see that the success is a very relative word. What I think as a success is not necessarily what an entrepreneur thinks as a success. People will be very happy if I get a huge investment. Some people may find that as a success. Some people will say that, okay, I'm making profit, that makes a success. Somebody else will say that I changed the lives of a lot of people. No, that actually makes a big success. So success that way is a very relative word. It's internal to you to decide what makes us a success. No, you may be knowing this Gen Robotics in which invented that drain cleaning, manhole drilling. So they feel that every robot they make, they are actually making life of some of the people better. So they consider that as a big success. So this is a very relative word, and that is something which, as long as it gives you personal satisfaction, it's actually the ones which we need to really work on. Because at the end, why are you doing entrepreneurship is also because of that, right? Otherwise, you could have, and all good entrepreneurs could have been a very great employees. There's no doubt on that, because the type of the qualities they have can actually any organization would like to hire them. So they have actually become an entrepreneur because they wanted to do something meaningful, and that leads to the success process.
True. I mean, it's so true that you said, right, that about entrepreneurs being great people to be in your organization. Even in my own organization, there are several entrepreneurs and several people who tried entrepreneurship and then they moved on to working in a company. Their attitude is very different. The sense of ownership that an entrepreneur has is so different from somebody who hasn't experienced entrepreneurship, right? So that part is true. Now, in terms of my experiences, one of the best decisions I took was not to do something. So we stopped certain divisions in my company. So there was one banking division where we made banking software, and we had a software for clinics, doctors, right? So that this is way back 10 years ago, right? So I decided that we should shut it down. That turned out to be an excellent decision because we were able to focus our energies onto the core parts of our business. So, resources were free, focus was more defined, time was available for the top management as well. So, deciding to not do something was a very good decision. One of the best decisions I've taken in some time. One important factor that I feel is when you decide to say no to something, or when you decide to say that I'm going to shut this down, we shouldn't treat that as a failure. The problem comes when we treat something as a failure. Then we don't want to do it. We delay the decisions. I maybe it's a little to do with the way we were brought up. In our school times. I've never heard of anybody who has failed in 10th standard and has been promoted to 11th standard. So. But entrepreneurship is not like that. You fail, you get promoted to the next level of entrepreneurship, both as a person and as a company, right? Because as long as you learn from it, you need to first accept that something's not right, analyze, see if it makes sense. If it does not make sense, cut, and then move forward. Learn from those experiences. If you learn from those experiences, failure is as good as a success. So, if you have to take tough decisions, you should first have that mental framework to look at failure as a learning point.
Yes.
So, I feel in my case, although shutting down that division was a failure, I've not looked at it as such. I mean, it just helped me in so many other ways. So that's one thing that I felt was a good decision that I've taken. And as you move forward in your entrepreneurial journey, right? As an entrepreneur, you can also give back to society. You can also give back to the ecosystem. You can be a mentor, you can be a coach to other companies who are much earlier in the stage of growth. You can invest in other companies, depending upon your stage where you are. And you don't have to wait to be a Flipkart or an Amazon before you start investing. Now, I have invested, but in a very small way. I mean, that amount that I invested may not have made too much of a difference in my company, but it will make a difference in some other company. So we don't have to always feel that now is not the time to contribute and give back to the ecosystem. We can always give back in whichever small manner that we can. So in terms of a decision of an entrepreneur at a later stage in their entrepreneurial journey, I think these are some things that entrepreneurs should consider. Now, another thing in terms of the relationship between different factors and success of a startup, have you seen any relationship between the years of experience before starting and the success of a startup?
The answer is yes. Now, I just wanted to tell one point which you said, which is very important about this failure. Now, and in fact, when we formulate the startup policy, not entrepreneurship policy for the state, I think this may be the only state where we have explicitly mentioned that there is nothing called a failed entrepreneur. There could be fraudulent entrepreneurs. That is a different thing. But there's nothing called a failed entrepreneur. There can be failed enterprises. Because if you are failing because of a genuine reason, it could be a business change or whatever be, then it does not stop you to quit entrepreneurship at all. You can actually go back. So policy itself speaks about saying that there is no failed entrepreneur as such. Now, coming back to your this question about the experience and the success, what we find is that Kerala earlier had only mostly, at least in the startup ecosystem, people who were fresh from the colleges. And you rightly point out the experience you had while looking at some of this idea stage people who are coming from the colleges. Their world vision is very limited. And many times they are only worried about the product development per se. But in the last 3 years, we have seen more and more experienced people getting into the entrepreneurship, and I can say that our success rates have actually gone up substantially. It is not scientifically validated because the sample size may not be something which can validate it, but we can say that people with experience comes with not only the tech or the business experience, but they also comes with many other things. They comes with linkages, which is important in business, right? When you are a fresher, you may not have the type of linkages with you. See, for example, you are starting, let's say an IIMK alumni starting. Now you are along with you. A lot of people are at different stages in different companies. That brings a big thing. The second thing is you also have a reasonably good financial security. So on the other hand, when a youngster is joining, he may not have that type of financial security. He may be leveraging on a parent's money, and then there will be always a pressure from the parents to give, to come out, so to make it profitable very fast. So these two factors, plus obviously experience makes a big thing because you are worked on an organizational context. We have in Kerala, we have mixed bag. We have companies who have come from directly from colleges having done very well. Gen Robotics one, Shastra is another one. Both of them have actually gone to places. They have actually now have even global footprints. But if you take the larger number, the ones which are succeeded are the people who have good experiences, then came and started business assets, because they may not be really worried about and financial stability and networking. I found are two key elements which help them when they are when you come with the experience person. But it also is important that when you come with the experience, you also need to unlearn quite a few things. Now, if you come with, I'm sure I discussed this in one of the cases earlier. Right? I don't know whether you have taken or some of the people have taken. No, there is a company called Crocs, which all of us are familiar with. No? The company which makes the footwear.
Okay.
Crocs came much later when footwear industry was almost on a plateau. So everybody thought that Crocs will not succeed because it's coming into what we call as a commodity market. So what Crocs did to us, the Crocs founders did to us, they did not appoint even a single person from footwear industry in their marketing. Not even a single person. They took only people from electronics industry. Because they say that if I am going to recruit people from footwear industry, they will have the dogma which the footwear industry have. They will think only that way. You cannot really make a break there. You really require a very different thinking. So when a person coming from, let's say, an IBM or an older company, very structured company, and then start a very small startup, the mindset may have to change. You really start. Many things have been taken for granted in a large company, but when you are coming to a startup, many things you have to do yourself. You need to that reorientation is extremely important. So the freshers will have such dogmas may not be there. People with experience may have that, but then if you put both, the positives of people with experience is actually more because they have many other elements which help them to go into the next level.
True. It's interesting that you talked about Gen Robotics, right? So what I felt is that it's not that if you are fresh out of college, you have zero chance of success, or if you have 20 years of experience before working, you have zero chance of success. I think it's just a matter of probability. your probability of succeeding as an entrepreneur is different at different stages. So what I felt is that when you have some experience, right, like you rightly said, there's a worldview. You have a worldview which guides you in certain directions, which gives you that confidence, right? When you face certain situations, no, this is how it works. You can give that kind of a perspective to things. But having too much of a worldview, like you said, is also a problem. There are so many things that you'll have to unlearn, just because you have too much of experience. And uh, another thing I felt is that, let's say you have a lot of experience, you also have a lot of comfort, a lot of uh, you're living a cushy life, a comfortable life. Getting out of that is going to be a challenge for you, because you had this amazing life. So some level of experience is definitely useful, but having zero experience doesn't mean that you have zero chance of success. But at the same time, the more experience you have, it gives you a bit of a advantage. But if you have too much of experience, I feel that can work slightly to your disadvantage. Again, the size of the company matters also. Talking about things to unlearn, uh, before I joined, before I took over the companies, I was working in Capgemini, and before that in Southern Computers. So both of them are IT firms. So uh, so I had some things to unlearn myself, so they're large organizations, and typically the teams that I work with were homogeneous in the sense that everyone, as a developer, everyone else is a developer, and the level of skill was more or less the same. So when I, went on with my entrepreneurial aspects, I just thought that anybody could code. It's stupid. Right now, when I think about it, it's stupid. But I just thought anybody can code. I mean, it was never a challenge for me. And I thought whomever I saw in my past experience where I was able to code well, I thought anybody could code. So I didn't have any filter, any criteria for selection of developers, and that was a problem for me later on. Similarly, because I was exposed to a homogeneous environment, uh, now when you're into entrepreneurship and you have finance team, the design team, the development team, all of them think and work in different ways. So you cannot expect a finance team person to think in the same way as a designer. So you have to unlearn those aspects. It's true. Now, uh, just another thought, in terms of when you should quit. So if you're employed and you have an idea, when is it a good time to start becoming an entrepreneur?
See, one thing is, obviously you will have that urge. If you keep on working on that idea, and at some point of time you get that flashpoint. Now, this flashpoint can come at different cases, and generally, if you have a reasonably good social security measure, when a social security means like your spouse is employed, or you have a reasonably good savings will take you for a 6 to 8 months at least runway, or even more depending upon the type of thing. And you feel that not many of your comforts need to be compromised. That's the time when you take plunge. And we also feel that many times people who are working in organizations, they find that, see, something which is so obvious, why are they not doing it? The organization, I've told the organization this is something which can be done, but they have not doing it. And I have a colleague who was working in a very large company, in a very senior position, very large company. So he keeps on telling me that, see, he was also in a president level. So he said that even as a president, I'm not able to implement it. I will quit this. And now he has actually moved out and started developing a product which the company now buys back. Now, interesting thing is the same large MNC actually takes his product and integrate it with their product and then start selling it. So recently when I spoke to him, he said that this is exactly what I was telling. The company could have done this by themselves, much lower cost rather than what I'm doing, because I also take my profitability on that. Now, this is a very common thing with people with experience. Like when you work in an organization and you feel that there is a opportunity for you to take to the next level, but then the organizations, especially large organizations, have got a lot of processes which does not allow you to move very agile. that's the time actually you may decide to quit, or and you may decide to break. And people with experience, when they break, their risk is actually, of course, there is a loss of revenue which may happen for a short period of time, but their risk is not that high because you are doing by a choice. You are not doing by a compulsion. When an youngster many times are doing, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people who are right from the college who are doing, many times they are doing more by a compulsion because they did not get a right job, or they did not get a job. So let me go into the entrepreneurship. That sort of a thing may not really succeed. There are two things. One, when you quit from there are tools which some of the earlier entrepreneurship institutions and all do, where you do some inventory, where you look at your psychological traits and say that, okay, this type of a score you have, this is the right time for you to move away. But leaving that, yeah, there are tools like that. But leaving that, my take is that if you have an idea which you believe, and people who come from an industry actually come with specific good tech skills, not only coding, but it could be tech skills, which actually means that the product can actually go into the next level per se. So that is basically where you can actually start looking at starting something of your own.
I mean, related to this, in fact, we have one question from Sanjeev Sharma related to this topic itself, and that is essentially, should we continue with our job and do entrepreneurship in parallel? Is that something that should be explored? And that is a question that Sanjeev had.
I'm sure my answer is not the what you call technically or diplomatically correct answer. I always feel that, and this is a dilemma which I also faced here in Startup Mission, because if you look at many of the product companies also do service, right? And basic entrepreneurship is always about focus, right? You need to focus. Now the question is that if I don't have money to pay my people next day, how do I actually focus, right? So my take is always that it's good to have a cash cow tied up with your enterprise, and the ugliest cash cow is the one which is very beneficial. Now, let me clear it. What I meant is, see, you are a IT professional, assume. No, you are doing a consulting, and you started a company of your own. But at the same time, where you are trying to develop a product, along with that, you started an IT consulting firm, or not a IT consulting firm. You actually do personal consulting as such. Here, you are using your skills. So what happened is, this is something exciting for you. So both product development is exciting, and the service which you do also is exciting. So what happened is, you lose focus. On the other hand, you start developing your product and start a coffee shop, which you hate, because I'm sure that coffee shop is not my cup of tea. I'm interested in developing an IT company, but coffee shop is something which gives me cash flows, and this cash flows will sustain me till my product is getting ready. If I do allied businesses, then we see that this straddling between this and that happens, and people actually finally end up in nowhere. Not all, but most of them are like that. And entrepreneurship is not only about creating high risk, high value items. Entrepreneurship is also about low value addition also. Even if you start a coffee kiosk in a bus station, it is actually an entrepreneurship. You don't have to go and sit there. No, you employ a guy there. Each of your coffee sells for 10 rupees. The coffee vendor will give you the whole thing at around 6 rupees. The person has to be paid. You need to take a land. You need to take the space. That's all, and it gives you revenue. So you have several. This is one example. There are several such cash cow models which are available. They are not exciting. They are not very glamorous, but they ensure that there is some level of continuous cash flows are there in your earlier stages as such. And if you can find out that, and then you don't have a problem. But the other thing which Sanjeev Sharma asked, I believe, is that he says that I'm working at the same time I'm going to develop the product, right? Yeah. There the challenge is that you are doing a very related stuff, and unless you are very, very focused and divide these two, you will have a challenge. You will still put more, because if you have a deadline to meet in your office, your product will actually go backside. So you will not be able to take the real plunge sort of a thing. And that will, I mean, I've seen a lot of people who wanted to do that. It's almost like the guy who was looking for the gold in the alchemist. You keep on traveling and you're not finding the gold, that sort of a thing. So that happens. So
True, true.
I've seen this and I've given this to quite a few people, and most people did not agree. I mean, they did not take, but some people have taken that advice very seriously, and then they came back and said that actually it worked very well, and we found that no, we this is something which actually helped us to ensure that our product actually get developed. And there are few cases where the other entrepreneurship activity, which they were taken only as a cash flow, actually really flourished. While the second one has not gone. That's also there. But many other cases, because the point which you mentioned earlier is very valid, and that is something which many times we ignore. There is an opportunity cost for each of us. That opportunity cost depends upon how much I get on my alternate opportunity. So if I am in a job and if I'm command, let's say 50 lakhs or 100 lakhs, then my entrepreneurship also should give me something close to that, right? If I'm getting only 1 lakh from entrepreneurship while I could have worked in job and get a crore, then there is obviously a challenge. So you need to actually ensure that even if you take a longer run and take the present value, these should match. And today's world, entrepreneurship is rewarding. Not only the emotionally rewarding, it is also physically rewarding. We used to speak about Gen Robotics again, no? Because they were university toppers, so they actually got good jobs. But 2 years down the line, if you look at the type of network they have, it's far more than any of their colleagues who have joined a job. It is very short today. It's not like you need to become 30 years to become a unicorn. You are actually becoming a very successful company in a very, very short period of time. So such things is something which need to be looked at, because while it gives you a lot of personal satisfaction, it also should give me reasonably closer to my opportunity cost return as. That's basically where these sort of support side events also might help. I'm sure that you have a very different opinion on this.
No, it's similar, right? What I felt is that if you have a job and if you want to do entrepreneurship as a side business, entrepreneurship is never a side business. It's a
Yes.
full-time thing. So because you have your, job, you will always give importance to that. And if there's something wrong in entrepreneurship, which will be there, I mean, like I said, it's a roller coaster ride. There will be ups, there will be downs. So during those down periods, when you have something very comfortable with you, right, you'll always feel that, okay, let's just go back to this. You won't push yourself hard enough. Now, if you take that plunge, if you burn your boats, if you burn the bridges, and you jump into entrepreneurship, then you have nothing to fall back on. So you will try your level best. Now, it's important to decide when you want to jump, right? It's not that the moment you have an idea, okay, I quit. No, you try and talk to people, try to talk to customers, potential customers, try to validate whether your idea has a market potential, has sense to it. See if you're able to, validate at least a small part of that idea, and then you take those decisions. Now, the thing is, let's say you have sufficient experience, you decide to quit and move on to entrepreneurship. If it succeeds, that's fantastic. You will have that fire to succeed because you don't have a job. That pressure will be there. That bit of pressure helps in some ways. Now, let's say it doesn't work out. You can go back to your previous, job or whatever it is. But I agree with you. Beyond the stage, you have to burn your boats and then just take that plunge. When you take that plunge is important, but you just have to take that plunge. Uh, you know, when it comes to uh, running a startup and running a well-established business, do you think there's any difference in the perspective or mindset that's required?
Yeah, absolutely. In a well-established business, you have a lot of processes in place. in a startup, the reason why it's actually good is it's have to be agile. While in a well-established organization, that's what we spoke about this learning also, unlearning of that. So you may be having you may have to play a multiple roles, right? You need to morning you may be a person who will go and source your finances. Afternoon you may be doing the marketing. Third, you may be an HR head, motivating the team. You need to wear the hats one after the other in a very very fast succession. I mean, you don't have even a change of time. So that is something which is, but which in a larger organization or a well-established organization, you may not have that at all. You may have
True.
processes in place. But having said that, that also helps you to take risks. You can actually do experimentation, which is not possible in a organization, because it's like no, you elephants dance. It doesn't dance as often as rabbits, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
it takes a lot of time for them to do that. So that is something which makes startup world an important world, and especially in today's time where local entrepreneurship opportunities are going to go up in a big way, and you will have across the country, you will have a lot of such opportunities opening up, and we have seen people coming out with uh, uh, very interesting ideas which sort of never happened in a well-established company as such. So that change is very important. But having said that, a startup also becomes a well-established company at some point of time, right?
Mm.
It's not that the startup will remain as a
It
startup
always
forever.
be a start.
Yeah,
True.
and that is a time where you need to start looking at how do I delegate, how do I expand, how do I do the scale up. And I always feel that the challenge of growth is more difficult than the challenge of starting,
Mm.
because starting, a lot of people are there to support you. When you grow, many times you may not get real support as such, and that is very very important, that you need to have proper coaches, proper
Correct.
mentors. But unfortunately, that proper mentors is almost like an oxymoron in India, because we as a mentor, many times the person will start managing your business. That's not what a mentor is supposed to do.
Correct.
Mentor is only a sounding board. A mentor is the one who can just show and say that these are the blind spots. You take a call, because the reality of a mentor is very different from the reality of the entrepreneur. Because the entrepreneur have got many variables which mentor is not aware. But we have seen 90% of the cases. My challenge in startup mission is not to find good entrepreneurs. My challenge is to find good mentors,
Good mentors.
because everybody who comes as a mentor is actually, they actually started giving directions. You need to do this, you
Exactly.
need to do that. That is not what a mentor or a coach is supposed to do. And in India, you don't have too many people like that. You have very few. And I think earlier you were speaking about this, that some of the experienced entrepreneurs who have gone through this journey, they are the right mentors actually. No, it's not that somebody who has done a great course on entrepreneurship or somebody who has taught entrepreneurship is the right mentor. And the persons who have done this, they have gone through that, and especially in the non-linear business. Now, people used to ask me this question, that what is the biggest challenge of Kerala? I always say that biggest challenge of Kerala is that you don't have an ecosystem where you have too many non-linear businesses. If you look at
Mm.
Bangalore, you have Amazon or Google or Microsoft or even Byju's, which are all non-linear businesses. Making a large business in a very short period of time is very different from making a large business in a long period of time. If I have grown a business large in 30 years, the way I will tell is start small, be slow, don't take risk, don't invest. First, let us make our money. That will be the type of advice which will be given. That may not be the right advice in a world which moves very fast. So such mentors who can actually help you to showcase you your potential blind spots, can actually help you to drive development. That if we can find out, it's actually that can actually a big winning factor for many of the startups. And even I go back to Gen Robotics. Gen Robotics had a very small strategic investment from Mr. Rajan Anandan. But that small strategic investment was a huge benefit for them, because the type of support he gave, type of mentoring he gave, for an young startup was phenomenal. So such things actually help a company to grow very fast and very differently as such. So that is something which I think people should also start looking at. And the best part is an institution like IIM have got a lot of alumni at very different positions, both in entrepreneurship space and other spaces. Many of them can actually support each other. And I believe that you people have already started a fund also, right? Which
Yeah,
is
true.
basically to do an early stage investment. So those things, and when IMK started, I was lucky to be there almost from the start. In the third batch, we made a decision that we had a challenge that we are a very young IIM, first IIM in a non-metro place. So how do we catch up with senior IIMs? So one thing which we did was we took people with a lot of experience. For the first time in the IIM history, we took people with 15 years experience,
Hmm.
12 years experience, etc. The idea was that these people will actually increase the age of IIM also, which is very true. So today we have many of them at president level positions in many organizations. Such alumni can actually be a great mentors, and now I'm sure that the if you look at how IIT, IIM alumni many times make good startups is primarily because of this mentor connect which comes to you. So
Hmm.
that is something which I think the CD Club also will be attempting, and will be a good platform for that.
True. I mean, like you said rightly, even IIM Kozhikode has an alumni angel fund, right? So there are about 74 people who invested, alumni essentially who invested, and we've been able to invest in about 13 to 14 odd companies so far. So
Very good.
giving back to society, right? That helps a lot. Now, we were talking about coaching and mentorship, right? Uh, One aspect that you rightly talked about is the role of a coach or a mentor is not to give answers, but to ask the right questions. The coach should that is a role that the
Correct.
coach should really take. He should ask the right questions, which will make the entrepreneur think. Now, you don't have to have a designation of a coach or a mentor, right? It's just essentially a well-wisher, someone who thinks good about you and has you in his mind and asks you the right questions, opens the right doors for you. Those are the kind of things that a mentor or a coach can really do, and that can add a lot of value to an entrepreneur, provided he's open enough to listen and open enough to answer those questions, those tough questions that the coach or mentor asks. It's true. It's true that you talked about.
Yeah, but I think Arjun, this point which you said is very valid. But unfortunately, while I said the coaches, many of the mentors also give directions. The same happens with startups also. They expect the vendors to do work for them.
True. Yeah, true. That's true.
Because they
But
will say, okay, where do I get money? That's not what the mentor's job is, right? They have that. So on the other hand, if you come and say that, okay, I'm planning to take venture fund or I'm going to take an angel fund, then the coach should ask some very critical questions which force me to think whether that's the right thing for me or is the debt capital is a good thing for me.
true.
That is what is required. But
True.
because, again, it's also a very continuum. Like you have people who are experienced, who are passionate about entrepreneurship, and there are other set of people who think that any idea will sell as long as I have money. So
True.
that education is an issue.
True. 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 I think what we'll do is we'll move on to questions from the audience. So we have one question from Arun Nair. So his question is, is there a relationship between educational qualification and entrepreneurial success? How important is it to have a management education to run a successful startup?
It depends upon what is the type of entrepreneurship you are starting.
Hmm.
See, there is something called when you say education. I don't believe education is about qualifications, but education is about many other things, right? Qualification is one part of it. So it's just because you are a first ranker does not mean that you become a great entrepreneur. That is not at all true. But
Hmm.
your education in good institutions brings you quite a bit of worldview, quite a bit of linkages, quite a bit of multiple perspective. Now, MBA education, especially, why MBA education can help. again, very important that is it the right MBA education, because uh, right MBA education is basically where you are basically posing a problem, whether it's a case study or something, and ask people from multiple disciplines to reflect on that. Whether that happens in reality or not is a very different question. But that is the right way of a good MBA classroom should be, right? Where in a case study, rather than a prof explaining everything, the prof will put, and you must have seen that in many of the courses also, that they just ask people to reflect on it. So somebody with a pharmaceutical background will reflect in a very different way. Somebody from a HR background or somebody in a finance background will reflect a different way. So your decision making skills get honed, because the best decision maker is the one who may have a larger roundup view.
Hmm.
So that to that extent, MBA education helps. So to develop the perspectives. But even MBA education is where you are being asked to mug something in the textbook and write. Then I don't think it is much of a value as such. But the literature and the evidences says that the people with educational qualifications are actually more driving larger tech enterprises. When you come out the tech enterprises, people with the background and skill sets and education qualifications are actually have a higher chance of success. But having said that, there could be other cases also. And, the common adage or the common thing which especially our youngsters, college students speak about is that Bill Gates is a college dropout, Steve Jobs is a college dropout. But of course, they were dropped out from Princeton and Harvard, I
True.
think. So,
True.
so getting into these places itself is actually not an easy job.
True.
But then you also have a lot of others who have college dropouts who have not done anything.
Yeah.
You cannot really justify it by doing that. But in a education, as I said, education is not only about the knowledge which you get, but it gives you a lot of linkages, perspectives. It also helps a lot of people who work with you, studied with you, who may be in very different positions,
Exactly.
which can actually help you. That's a very important thing. That leveraging is
Exactly.
something very, very important, which is the success of a future enterprises. You cannot. Rome is not only built in one day. It is not even built by one Caesar. It is built by many people. So you
True.
need a team, and you also need external stakeholders. So today, when you are a part of an IIMK alumni, you have a problem. You may have somebody else who will be able to support you, who can
True.
actually help you with maybe with some connections, or maybe with some funding of some of those aspects. That is something which we need to leverage on.
True. Uh, like you said, see, the way I view it is education uh, provides access to a network. So, depending upon how good that educational institute is, let's say it's a really good MBA institute, it gives you access to a network.
Correct.
That definitely books, gives you some knowledge. It gives you perspectives. It opens up your mind. But at the same time, that network is extremely valuable, extremely powerful. So the way I see it is, education offers access to a network.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, there are so many networks, right? You have business networks like Entrepreneurs Organization, EO. That's a network of entrepreneurs all across the globe. You have about 13,000 entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs all across the globe. That's a network. You have YPO, Young Presidents Organization. Again, a network of successful, presidents of companies all across the globe. That's a network. An MBA college, a good MBA college, is also a network, and a very powerful network. So that helps you succeed. The chances of success increases with uh, more the number of networks you have. They say, right? Uh, you are who you know, and you are who you are with, right? So the people that you know, the people you are with, influences your thought processes, influences the chances of success of your company. So I feel from that perspective, education helps when you view it from that angle. Now, we have one more question from Jason, and he's asking, what's the right time to approach an investor?
Yeah, I think before look at right time to approach an investor, you need to ask whether you need to approach the investor at all, right? So because the every enterprise is not necessarily the investor friendly. It's important, and the type of investor also is equally important because let ask this question: why do an investor invest in you? Invest in you, especially if you are not like an Omidyar network or something who are more socially oriented. That I'm not speaking about that, but I'm speaking about a normal investor. A normal investor invests because they are expecting a return, and they are expecting a decent return, right? Maybe 15%, 20% return. Now the challenge is that most of those investors are expecting this return by selling you. I mean, they are not going to be with you unless you are a strategic investor. So if basically they are expecting that you need to your valuation will go up, so I can exit at some point of time, maybe 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line. Now the challenge here is that they always work on a portfolio. They are not investing only in you, they work on a portfolio. And the typical another common adage is that 9 out of 10 startups fail, right? So this is another normal thing which we speak about. So the interesting thing is this: I'm an investor. I invest in 10 companies, and I expect 15% return, assume, on my total investment, of which I know 9 is going to fail, which means from each of them I am expecting 150% investment, right? Now that is as an investor mindset. So that is why many times if you are looking at a typical VC or a typical angel, they are actually looking at a very fast growth venture, which actually may have to be more. Many times it is in a B2C sort of a thing where the market size is very large. You are able to penetrate larger. You are able to showcase more eyeballs and things like that. There are maybe subset of investors who are not like that, but identifying the right investor becomes a very important thing. The other options is that there are other elements. You have strategic investors who may take a larger stake, but along with you to grow, or you can also go for debt capital, right? See, debt is not a bad word, right? Many times we believe that debt is a bad word. Not necessarily. Debt is also, in fact, finance. We must have seen that the leveraging is actually a very important strategy also. But what happens is conventional debt companies like banks and all, they actually look at the asset market. Asset heavy organizations are are preferred for the debt financing, not asset light. But that is changing now. There is a shift to asset light industries now. You must have seen recently, just last month, we have worked with Kerala Financial Corporation, come out with 3 new products. One product is that up to 10 crore debt without a collateral can be given as long as you have a purchase order. So if you have a purchase order, you get without a collateral 90% of the purchase order up to 10 crores. So this is again, I mean, maybe the first time you are giving such a large collateral free loan. The second is again up to 10 crore if you are without collateral, if you have got an investment in you. That means if a proper investor has invested in you, so it's like a venture debt.
Okay.
So you are basically, if you have but venture debts generally are very costly. So what we have done is, Startup Mission has actually given an interest subvention in that. So they will be charging around 10%. I will give 3%. So in effect, you are getting a venture debt at 7%. I don't think anywhere in the India you can get at 7%. So if you are an invested company, because you have gone through a due diligence process, you get this venture debt again without collateral. The third thing is, if you are a social enterprise, that is, you are in a social entrepreneurship, you are looking at one of the SDGs, like social development goals, then up to 1 crore without a collateral you can get. So, see, why we came out with this is primarily because what I've seen in Kerala is that a lot of startups are actually profit-making startups, or they can make profit in a short period of time. They are not necessarily the right thing for a investor community, because investor actually looks at there are news reports saying that profit is a bad word for an investor, because investor believes that if you make profit, you are not investing enough. So such companies which are profit making, who are actually right candidate for debt or for the primary market. Primary market also is possible, which I think we have not really looked at as such. Now, coming back to Jason's specific question, and if it is a normal startup which you are looking at, my take is that you need to always ensure that you are wet. You always have a continuous stream of investor money with you, because it is important that I'm doing well, so let me not take uh, anything. I've seen startups like that. We keep on telling them, don't do that. You are now doing well. Your investor interest is there. Take it. They say, no, no, no. I will. I'm comfortable. I have a couple of crores in my bank. So why should I go for that? When suddenly a calamity strikes, you will have a problem. So it's important that you need to always plan 8 to 10 months runway, and wherever you see the runway is actually getting dried up, go for a next investment if you are an investable company. And if you are not an investable startup, don't be worried about it, because a large number of companies in India are not investable. Investable from a venture capital point of view. We have maybe how much, 40,000 startups, and we may have maybe 63 lakhs SMEs. And that 63 lakh SMEs are not necessarily venture capital's investment sort of a thing, but they are all, many of them are doing very well. So entrepreneurship is not only about getting investor capital, it is also about the other alternatives also.
Okay. You touched upon social entrepreneurship in your response here, and we have a question from Nandita. She's asking, is it possible to engage in social entrepreneurship and still make a living?
Yeah, see, be very clear that there is a difference between a social work and social entrepreneurship. Social work is a not-for-profit entity which you are making, where you are not really making profit at all. A social entrepreneurship is a for-profit entity, but it addresses a social problem. So, I think she's from Kerala. She has the company called Trash Cone, which is based in Bangalore. She made this waste management system. It's a social entrepreneurship, because waste is a big problem. Now it's a fast-growing company. It's a social entrepreneurship company. Biosense is again a social entrepreneurship company. So social entrepreneurship is rewarding. The only challenge which we find in social entrepreneurship, that's why we came out with this thing, is that investors at least are not very happy, very favorable at the early stages. You have different there are different impact investors and all which are available, but you need to really find out them. Other than impact investors and some of the trust funds, others are not really looking at investing in social entrepreneurship. So there is a challenge of social entrepreneurship to take off the ground. So that is where we thought that we may have to actually support. Now, again, going back to, I give the example of Gen Robotics because I'm giving multiple examples. Gen Robotics to me is actually a social entrepreneurship, because they were actually solving a social problem. And the initial stages, we find that they require money. We actually could get CSR funds from BPCL. BPCL actually financed them through their CSR funds. So such funds are also available in the early stages. So it is wrong to say that social entrepreneurship is not rewarding. It is rewarding, provided you have a large problem which you are addressing, and it is not just a social work.
Okay. I think we are running short of time now, so we'll look at the last question. We'll just take one more question, and that's from Ravi. His question is, many entrepreneurs who never calculate the risks have succeeded beyond anybody's expectations. If one calculates too much, the chances are that he or she may never plunge in. What do you feel?
See, that this is see, what happens is we are actually seeing those stories of people who have taken risks and succeeded. For every person who have not taken, who have not calculated risk and taken successful, there may be 100 people who have failed that we don't see. No, this is actually a misnomer, right? No, because it's we used to say that
survivorship bias or survivorship policy.
Yes,
or something
exactly.
like
So the people who have walked in the middle of the road, the percentage of people who died walking middle of the road is very small, because not many people have walked through the middle of the road, right? People who walk to the side of the road are the people who must have died more. But the point is, on the other side, what Ravi said is right. Too much of a calculation, and you cannot do a paralysis by analysis. You keep on analyzing and you never move ahead. That is also not correct. So when we speak about risk, there are two elements. Risk is known unknowns. You know that these are some of the things, and you take a reasonable care for that. But having said that, we as an entrepreneur, especially when you are earlier in the journey, you will see a lot of black swans. It's actually wrong to say that lot of black swans, because if the moment you have that itself is wrong. Still, I'll see that there are a lot of unexpected, unanticipated events. Now, how do you maneuver that depends upon how fast you catch them. The keeping your radars on. That's what I spoke about. Going into the little detail at the first. Keeping your radars open, ensuring that you scan what is happening in your organization, and see a potential fall as early as possible and correct it. That is something which we need to look at. But I will not fully agree with Ravi saying that no, let's blind shoot and then people who have blind shot has actually won. That I'm not sure will be true that. That's a little too much. It's too much of a risk taking. No, risk taking is jumping from the third floor of a house, not from the 15th floor of a house without a safety belt, right?
Okay. I think we've run out of time now, and so we'll wrap this session up. I'd like to thank you, Professor, for coming here and being with us on this Sunday, especially on a Sunday. I think all our viewers would have had a wonderful time listening to your insights. And thank you, sir.
Thank you, Arjun. And I think I wanted to stress one more point which you mentioned, which I think it's a very important point. You said that you have tried 33 times to get the investment, right?
Yes.
Which is something which is very, very important for people to understand, especially many of the young early entrepreneurs. We used to see people getting rejected in 2 times and then come and say that no, this nothing will work. People will not give. Any investor is actually investing their money, so they do a huge amount of due diligence and multiple times. So
True.
it's getting somebody else's money. Investment is not an easy task, but perseverance is a very important key. And thank you for inviting me. And I believe that this forum is going to be a very vibrant forum, and we see more and more entrepreneurs coming out of it. We have some great companies from IIMK. Ninja Card, for example, is one of them, and many others across the alumni base. And I hope, and I'm not as hope, I'm sure that this forum will enable more number of such entrepreneurs to come, because we believe that we will have a lot of successful startups, successful entrepreneurs coming from IIMK. And thank you once more for inviting me. And any questions or any comments, please do connect with me. I still keep my IIMK ID, so you can write to me in saji@imk.ac.in. So I will be happy to connect with each of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. And to our viewers, like Professor Saji said, this is an entrepreneurial talk series. So we'll be having more entrepreneurs and experts talking about various aspects of entrepreneurship. So the question is, who do you want to listen to? Which entrepreneur do you want to listen to? Which expert do you want to listen to? Tell us in the chat, and the organizers will definitely look into it. And once again, thank you for coming here for this session, and I wish you all the very best for your entrepreneurial journeys. May the force be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.